So I'm Franz Jensen, a German living in France for over 30 years, and I'm a retired physician who worked in a French company, in a French pharmaceutical company. I'm living in Aigues-Mortes in the south of France, near Montpellier. At the moment, I'm in a bad health, without a normal voice, but I do my best to make me understand. I will speak on free will incompatible with a retrospective but not a prospective definition of determinism. The free will problem is a philosophical issue dependent on a specific definition of determinism. Incompatibilist philosophers claim that free will is inconceivable under the postulates of determinism, and therefore require ontological indeterminism, which is proposed by quantum mechanics. In contrast, compatibilists admit that free will is consistent with determinism and thus does not need quantum mechanical indeterminism. These discussions by philosophers are of great importance for moral responsibility.
I'm sorry, Franz, could you please share the screen with us, or we would like to see your presentation.
That's necessary?
Well, if you have slides for your presentation, that's I am assuming.
Yeah, but not yet. It will come.
Oh, okay. So go ahead, please.
You can see me or not?
I can see you, but I cannot see your slides.
Yeah, but it will come. It will come.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Okay.
There are only 3 slides. So
Okay,
just
sorry.
wait a moment. Tiens, arrête le partage. Okay. When free will is applied to quantum mechanics, it also allows the free choice of specific experimental arrangements, which lead to different complementary interpretations, such as the particle or wave structure of elementary particles. Now I will show you my slide. Je ne sais pas si ça marche. The philosophical definition of determinism is based solely on the notions of past and future, thereby eliminating the present. Although there's one unchangeable past, 2 opposite definitions of future can be considered: a retrospective future and a prospective future. A retrospective future, adopted in philosophy, seems to include free will to exclude the prospective future rooted in biopsychology is perceived and experienced in everyday life and appears to be compatible with free will. The philosophical definition of determinism contains reference to a retrospective future, first proposed by Van Inwagen. The compatibilist McKenna defines determinism as the thesis that the facts of the past and the laws of nature entail one unique future. In conjunction with free will, McKenna states, if determinism is true, then given the actual past and holding fixed the laws of nature, only one future is possible at any moment in time. In order to ascertain that only one future is possible, the future must already be known. in which case it corresponds to the retrospective definition of the future. The known future is considered as a direct consequence of the past, and thereby completely eliminates the present. However, elimination of the present induces some contradictions. The past is generally considered as a memorized copy of a finished present. Thus, it cannot be separated from the future without a present. Given that the known future is necessarily lying in the past, it cannot be differentiated from the rest of the past without an intermediate present. These contradictions disappear when the definition of prospective future is adopted, as it corresponds to a still unknown future, as found in everyday experience. A generally accepted definition of past, present, and future considers that the present corresponds to the actual experience of time, and the past represents the memory of an already finished present, which can no longer be changed. As the future does not yet exist, it can only be imagined with probability and remains uncertain. An imagined future needs a mental representation, which is constructed based on anterior experience, drawing upon knowledge from education, information received through media, and opinions of other people, but is also influenced by our inborn preferences. And I should give you the next slide. Oh, sorry. So here, but it's also influenced by our inborn preferences and acquired motivations. Information and motivation are determinist factors, interacting at the level of mental representations only. Nevertheless, they can be influenced by other determinist factors, which can both be external, for instance, changing information conveyed by media, or internal, such as evolving personal motivations. Determinism with a prospective future corresponds to the requirement of a deliberation period for the existence of free will. It is time-consuming and allows progressive evaluation of almost equivalent alternatives in order to arrive at a dominant alternative which entails the final choice. The necessary time can be very short, for instance, when shifting one's pace from walking to running, but also very long, such as when planning a house construction. During a deliberation period, an agency cannot possess even partial knowledge of special physical specialists. Yes, somebody, that's, hello? That was claimed by philosophers. Non-specialists in physics are limited to knowledge gained through personal experience, acquired information, and personal motivations. Whereas in the beginning, alternatives appear almost equivalent, in the following evaluation process, one of those alternatives becomes dominant, leading to the decision at the end of the deliberation period. The difference between determinism, defined with retrospective or prospective future, is time consumption, which is completely lacking in a timeless retrospective concept of determinism. Therefore, the two definitions describe completely different kinds of determinism. With a retrospective future, an agency seems to passively undergo the laws of nature without the ability to make any changes to the course of events. With a prospective future, an agency with free will becomes an active participant in the evolution of events and is thus able to change future outcomes within a determinist system, albeit limited to available alternatives. A terrorist has a free will, allowing him to kill or spare other persons. As long as he is dominated by the doctrine of an extremist religion or exaggerated patriotism, he is likely to fulfill his initial intention. Nevertheless, after intensive repentant and abandoned his original intention. Thus, external determinist factors, such as discussions, as well as evolving inner motivations, can influence intentions of an individual capable of exercising free will, and thereby induce changes in a determinist world. Some mental functions entail the change from a prospective to a retrospective future. As the storage capacity of human memory, somebody's talking to me? No. As the storage capacity of human memory is limited, the information load involved by a time-consuming process, like the deliberation of free will, increases with time. The mental function of abstraction allows the amount of information that needs to be stored to be reduced simply by eliminating the time of the deliberation process, which has the advantage that the abstraction process concentrates on the essential features of the available information. Due to mental abstraction, the time-consuming free will deliberation becomes a timeless concept of free will requiring much less storage capacity. Consequently, the reduction of time simultaneously eliminates the process of free will deliberation, thereby leading to a retrospective future. The deliberation process is necessary for free will. When making decisions, one is often faced with alternatives imposed by our external environment, such as multiple paths starting from a common place, as illustrated by the philosophical example of the Garden of Forking Paths. Multiple possible body movements can similarly be imagined in our minds. At the beginning of the deliberation process, different alternatives seem to have equivalent values. In such cases, as long as there are no threatening consequences, a random choice can be easily accepted, akin to the choice of a lottery number in hazard games. The situation is, however, completely different when dramatic consequences have to be considered, as in Russian roulette. As soon as minor or major preferences for different alternatives emerge, the alternative with the dominant preference has to be evaluated as part of an evolving process. When these preferences are purely emotional in nature, the most attractive alternative is automatically chosen. The same is true for purely rational preferences, when after sufficient reflection, the best rational alternative is found. However, the problem arises if there is a conflict between emotional and rational preferences. Rational preferences are neutral, whereas emotional preferences can be felt as more or less attractive. Moreover, rational preferences represent moral responsibility with respect to societal or religious values. When somebody's life is threatened, the emotional preference to kill the aggressor is more stimulating than the rational preference imposed by the society to avoid this act. Here lies the essential free will problem concerning moral responsibility, which entails punishment if the imposed societal code of behavior is transgressed. After evaluation with all acquired knowledge and felt motivations, only the alternative perceived as the best will dominate at the end of free will deliberation, whereby the corresponding alternative is automatically chosen for realization. Now we'll come to the conclusion. Can you see me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. The free will problem is not dependent on the existence of physical determinism or indeterminism. It essentially arises during a single definition of determinism. Two opposite definitions are possible. One with a retrospective, already known future adopted by philosophers, and that with a progressive, yet unknown future derived from a biopsychological perspective. Retrospective future means that the future is already known and therefore lies in the past. Determinism with retrospective future becomes a timeless concept necessarily lacking the deliberation process. For incompatibilists, this determinist concept is inconsistent with free will, although compatibilists maintain it is a counterfactual feature. The opposite definition of determinism with prospective future maintains that the future does not yet exist and therefore only be mentally imagined with probability and uncertainty. It is compatible with the essential free will requirement of a time-consuming deliberation process, during which the best motivation for alternatives is evaluated and determines the final free will choice. Therefore, compatibility or incompatibility of free will is not due to existence of rather stems from one of its definitions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Frans, for your lecture. And I guess now it's the time to ask you difficult questions.
Yeah.
Okay, let us wait for the first question. Who is ready to ask the question?
Well, I have a question.
Yeah, fine.
If I may start. You're talking about knowing, okay, the future or knowing, but whose knowledge is that?
It's the philosophers who say that the past and the laws of future determine one unique future. If there is one unique future, it is already known. It cannot be uncertain because it's only one.
Okay, so you would
Therefore,
say
this is
it's
a
already fixed.
retrospective.
It doesn't need to be known to any person. It has to be fixed. That's what you mean.
In any case, the essential feature of free will is deliberation. And deliberation is time-consuming. And in the philosophical definition that there's only one future, there's no possibility for time consumption. That is already a fixed definition, as if we know all that, but we don't know the future. Future is uncertain. There are two different conceptions of the future. Do you understand that with only one future, there must be knowledge of the future?
Knowledge by whom again?
By the philosophers who called that. It's not my definition. It was McKenney who wrote it. McKenney is a compatibilist. And he clearly said that the laws of nature, the recent past, determine one unique truth. How can you say that if you do not know the truth? It's a different way. The future needs a deliberation period. We have no knowledge at the beginning, and after the period of deliberation, we come to one dominant alternative. So in the beginning, there's no knowledge, only at the end, and that is time-consuming.
Can I ask a question about this deliberation step, which I think you're saying deliberation is fundamental to the free will?
Yeah.
So yeah. My mobile phone or an old computer has free will then, but a fast computer would not have free will. My phone deliberates, it goes through different...
No, excuse me. The free will deliberation can be short or long. I told it. When you decide by walking, now running, it's very, very short. But if you have to construct a new house, it's very, very long. So the deliberation period can be short or long, whatever it is. But there must be alternatives at the beginning, which seem to be equivalent. And at the end of the period, there's only one dominant which you will take to decide.
Well, I would say my mobile phone does that. It's all the time looking at different alternatives and working out what to do for me. So would you say that it has free will?
Why not?
Okay.
Does your phone make progressive deliberation evaluates from equivalent alternatives to one dominant alternative? Does
it? Absolutely. Yeah, often does.
Oh.
When it's translating something, when it's working out a route on my sat-nav, when it's deciding which way to orientate the map on my screen, it's looking at alternatives, doing some calculations. Yeah. I don't think most people would say phone didn't have free will, I think.
In any case, for me, free will is compatible with determinism. The phone is a determinist system.
Well, it's only...
There's no counter-indication.
There's no what, sorry?
No contradictory between determinism and free will.
Oh, okay.
You can use such things in your mind by evaluating different alternatives. And that is deterministic for me.
Well, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Well, it's a kind of a question, kind of a comment. You are assuming that the determinism of the universe is not itself affecting the determinism of your own deliberations, meaning when you're thinking about alternatives and you're thinking in your deliberation period that there are different alternatives that appear to be equivalent to your brain, that might just be an illusion of your brain, when actually you will only find one deliberation, which is the only deliberation that is compatible with the deterministic laws of physics. So you're
you do something. You see that you are doing something, and that is deliberation. In the beginning, you don't know what you want, and then you know what you want. You are making this deliberation yourself. What has it to do with the with the universe?
Well,
because determinism or indeterminism is completely outside of this question.
So you think that the human decision making in the human brain is totally outside of the questions of physical reality?
No, it's independent from determinism or indeterminism in physics. Independent. It's the definition which philosophers made that there is only one future which is already known and which is already in the past. It's a false definition.
Okay. So the philosophers made a false definition.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So I didn't understand what your definition was then. Sorry.
My definition is a prospective definition which consumes time. And the philosophical definition is a point-timeless definition which does not consume time. And therefore it does not see the process of the deliberation. It is a process, and that is ignored by the philosophical definition. It's not outside physical reality. In my slide, I showed it. All is in physical. I can show you again if you want.
I think, if I may say something, what Franz is saying is that we used to think that deterministic picture was like that we have the past and the future. And what Franz is saying is that between the past and the future, there is a short period of time, whatever period of time, which he is calling present. And during this present time, whatever processes related to the free will take place. This is, I think, what he is trying to say to us. Because in the classical determinism, you have infinite past and infinite future. And then time zero when the future is separated from the past. But in the case of what Franz is saying is that the present time is certain amount of time. It's not just infinitely small amount of time.
That's right. That's completely right. And that is important to have free will. Without that, we just undergo what nature is calling us. You see here the ontological physical determinism within physical causal closure. That's free will is included in this.
Yes, but then the question, Franz, is, well, your definition of determinism is a bit different than physicists used to think, because we used to think that, I'm sorry, let us set time equals zero, and from this, whatever it means zero, we start to think and calculate or do whatever with the physical system. But you say to us that our brain needs whatever amount of time, and this is the presence, to make whatever decisions, and then those decisions they reflect in the future.
I just said that if there is determinism, free will is independent if there is determinism or indeterminism in physics. It's independent because it's a kind of false definition from the beginning.
Oh, I see.
It's not clear.
It's just a concept which is not right. And if you change the concept, then you have no problem with free will. In determinism or indeterminism, whatever one wants. The philosophical definition is timeless, the time point, as you like to say, the present zero.
Well, actually, I am a physicist, so the idea of discrete time steps or discrete space-time is in physics is not a new concept. I mean, all of quantum gravity and loop quantum gravity are already assuming that. And for instance, Carlo Rovelli did a lot of work with the issue of time.
Yes,
and the issue of a deterministic universe versus an indeterministic universe is really not hinging on the existence of continuous or discrete time. And also, I think in your declaration, it is different, the functioning of the past and the future in the universe or inside one's perception about the universe. If we are thinking about the brain, then we're talking about neuroscience, psychology, and so it's really the words and the symbols that you attach to your physical environment. If you're talking about physics, then we're talking about micro, nano scales of time, where the issue of what the now means is different. And
I understand.
And if you cannot change the problems of determinism simply by discretization, which is, I think, what you're proposing, just by discretizing time, it's not enough to solve the issue of free will. Sorry.
Excuse me, but free will, we live it. It's known in nanoseconds or in hundreds of years. We are living it. So physics can have definitions, whatever, in the very small scale or in the very, very high scale, cosmic scales and whatever. That we cannot live. We must restrict our definition of free will on what we can live and what we live every day. We are in that. A brain needs time. Sometimes short, sometimes long. But that's the only case we can have free will. We cannot have free will in the nanoscale. Therefore, it's a biopsychological problem. So you must make abstraction from extreme physics, small physics, and cosmic physics.
I think that it is not acceptable for philosophy to pursue a philosophical perspective where one assumes that the laws of physics or the laws of the universe do not matter. I mean, it is possible one can do that, but I don't think that's a good path. But that's my comment.
But I don't say that. I don't say that, not at all. But we are in a very special frame as humans. And the outside this frame can be whatever. What we are looking for, if in this special frame, limited frame, life, has flexibility in terms at the macroscopic level, not at the microscope, of course.
Hello?
Yeah,
I think there was a bad connection for a short time.
yeah.
Is everyone online back?
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. Thought it was just me.
Yeah, same here. I thought it was just me.
No.
Able to hear
So
the last.
everybody guilty. Okay, so anyone, is this correct, Franz, to say that you just separate physics from your understanding of free will?
I'm speaking on biopsychology. So that is not cosmic scale, nor the lowest physical scale. It's necessarily limited to the macroscopic. But there may be determinism or indeterminism in the macroscopic, which is not relevant for free will. The definition of free will is not correct by the philosophers. That's the only thing I would say. So if we change the definition of free will to a biopsychological perspective, then we are correct. There's no problem.
Okay.
There is, sorry, if I can, there is a work that might be interesting. Dan Wagner, the psychiatrist from Harvard, some time ago wrote a book called The Illusion of Conscious Will. And I think that what you mentioned to be the philosophical definition of free will is for neuroscience very similar to what Dan Wagner called the illusion of the conscious will. So the appearance.
What is that illusion? Because something when a killer changes his opinion, he changes the world, the part of the world.
Because what you think to be the reasons for your actions are just a narrative, a story you tell yourself, not the real reasons for your actions, which are mostly controlled by your inconscient actions of your brain. So what you call to be your will that is free is mostly self-storytelling. And
no. I wrote a paper on conscious and unconsciousness for free will. So I know very well that most of it is unconscious. But what is conscious, you know it, you hear it, and you have a process. You make a deliberation. You say, no, if I do A or B, I don't know. But if B is such and A is less well, then I prefer B. That is a process. It's limited to consciousness, and it's limited to the microscope. There are many limits. I agree with that.
There is actually a lot of technology as well as neuroscience, which just shows that by and large we don't know how we make decisions. Our conscious awareness of our decision-making processes is faulty, is flawed.
But you make decisions with your motivations, with your preferences. You
Yeah,
may
but-
prefer
Okay.
black or white or red.
There are lots and lots of reports and experiments which show people are not making decisions the way they think.
If the dishes,
I've done such experiments that where they measure when the person decided to make a certain action, but the action had already occurred, right?
Yes.
Yes, I recall it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
What about love?
well, that's an emotion / feeling. I
Yeah.
mean, that's
yeah, sure.
it's-
And that helps to make a decision. Yeah, sure.
yeah. But also the reasons or the causes for love are, at least to me, and I think to most of neuroscience, still a strong mystery. I mean, the reason why we love someone and not someone else.
For me also. we must keep free will discussion within a very small area in the microscope with time consumption and considering all what is unconscious in us and comes up as motivation or preference. Yes, all that. But we can change the deterministic world.
But don't you take the risk of restraining the capacity of philosophy to talk about free will so much up to a point where what philosophy is talking about is a narrow definition of free will, that it doesn't matter to anyone. I mean, it doesn't matter to neuroscientists, it doesn't matter to physicists, it doesn't matter to computer scientists, it doesn't matter to those who make cell phones, and then you just have this definition of free will that is like a loop that has no connection to the practical world. I mean, don't you take that risk by doing that constrainment?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think so. You cannot, you know what is the retrospective future? When you know already the future, which is already in the past, then you have a retrospective present or future. And that is not correct. That is a concentration of our knowledge in a timeless point construction. It's not the deliberation process, it's eliminated.
Oh,
You must accept that prospective and retrospective exist. Once you know the future and once you don't know the future. And a person doesn't know his future in normal life and has to construct it with all which comes from the unconsciousness, yes, with love, yes, with motivations, whatever it is, with influence from other people, from media, from your education, yes. These are all determinist factors which come in the deliberation process. But the final outcome is not known at the beginning of the deliberation process. That is the essence of what I will say. We have to pay attention with our like free will. Definitions may render the facts may not be compatible with the facts. Our definitions are very important.
well, I think that the discussion doesn't progress really.
No.
What about returning to a notion of free will which could be in conflict with laws of physics.
Who is speaking right now? Hello?
Who's the
Yes.
next one?
You want me to speak now, or?
Resnikov?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So I guess we should go to the next speaker. Thank you very much, Franz, Dr. Janssen, for your presentation. And
so I will start. I heard yesterday that almost everybody has the idea that free will requires non-predetermination. I'm the only to think that this is not true, since
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think I said exactly the opposite. I said that free will is independent of whether our theory is deterministic or not deterministic.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that.
Oh, in any case, but maybe it's not you, but others think that it requires non-predetermination. So I will come back to the puzzle. In a puzzle, merde. In a puzzle, I have problems. In a puzzle, there is no knowledge of the final outcome when you start the puzzle. And the player chooses between all pieces which are alternatives proposed from the system. To start the construction, everybody in his way. Most people will make different choices and thereby create new combinations in a determinist system. When the number of alternatives comes to the end, only the last available alternative is really imposed by the system. A second. The definition of future is completely different in physics and biopsychology. In physics, the future corresponds to the prediction of physical laws which are thought to be precise and certain. How can we be certain that the Big Bang corresponds to our established physical laws which lead to singularities? Does the universe's with space-time begin at the moment of Big Bang, or was there a pre-Big Bang as claimed by Penrose? If we are not certain on such physical predictions, even physical future becomes uncertain, as in biopsychology, which states that the future does not yet exist and can therefore only be imagined with probability and uncertainty. Free will is a conscious decision limited to a framework. Consciousness is the framework out of which free will cannot be exercised. Therefore, the unconsciousness has no free will and is determined but participates in the free will deliberation. Consciousness is limited in time, between hundreds of milliseconds and about 100 years. So free will has to lie within these time limits. But most important, it is not necessary to know how consciousness is constructed from the Big Bang, with physical determinism or indeterminism, since free will is surely a conscious reality experienced by everybody every day, and therefore not an illusion. Nevertheless, there could be inconsistencies between conscious experience and established physical laws. All depends if the physically predicted future is indeed considered as absolute true and can, for instance, explain with certainty if the Big Bang is the starting point of the universe and that there was nothing before, as claimed by Penrose. Finally, discordance of physical laws and physical reality. I was very impressed that the physicist Professor Nicola Ginseng proposed that physical laws and physical reality could be different. These are my comments.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jansen. And I guess, yes, please ask the questions or add the comments, whatever you wish to say.
I have some common points with Dr. Ginseng. Not all. I think I have to start from consciousness and not from the Big Bang.
Well, I mean, the Big Bang in my presentation was just an example. Take any time in the future, or maybe any space-like surface in the future. Doesn't need to be the Big Bang, and whether there is something before the Big Bang or not is irrelevant. The fact is that if the theory is deterministic from any point in the past, the laws of physics and its initial condition determine the future and the past.
No, but our problem is the future. You think that future is certain, and there I do not agree, because
well, it's not a matter of agreeing. The fact is that in a deterministic theory, the past determines the future. That's a fact. It's not an opinion. You may disagree in the sense that you may think that this doesn't correspond to reality, and that's fine with me. I also disagree. I don't think that's physical reality, but that in the theory, in a deterministic theory, that the past determines the future, that's the definition of a deterministic theory.
Okay, I'm more sure myself that my future is not yet existing.
That's fine. Me too. I agree.
That the Big Bang is existing as the physical laws pretend. I'm much less sure.
I've not come across a physical. I've not come across a physical theory which did calculations based on the Big Bang. Our physical theories are much simpler than that, because so that we can use them, and they are as described. They say if they're based on there being an initial state, you then have an evolution, and then you get a unique final state, and that's how they're formulated, and they're incredibly successful, aren't they? I mean,
yeah,
you're relying on that prediction every moment of your life. You're relying on that being a true prediction from science.
Okay, whatever science is, it's a prediction, and what I feel in daily life is a reality for me.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's very common that people feel that. Yeah. That needs explaining, doesn't it? I would say. But it's the feeling that needs explaining. It's the feeling that needs explaining.
Even in the macroscopic field, determinism can be conceived. No, in a deterministic macroscopic system, free will can be conceived, as I showed with the puzzle. So there's no big problem for me. We just have different concepts of free will. It's a definition problem. It's not so much a reality problem.
All right. Thank you very much. And I guess at this moment nobody wants to add the questions to Dr. Jansen. Thank you very much for your presentation and your comments.